A public affairs analyst have noted that the political crisis we see in Rivers State, stemming from the battle for supremacy between Fubara and Wike, and to the declaration of state of emergency in the state, has nothing to do with the people of Rivers State. It has nothing to do with securing the life and property in Rivers State, but rather has everything to do with 2027 general election. The public affairs analysts emphasize that they are doing everything possible to ensure that 2027 they emerge victorious by rendering every dissenting voice against them less effective.
Debo Ologwagba, the National Publicity Secretary, writing on behalf of the PDP, says the unconstitutional declaration by President Tinubu of the suspension of the democratically elected governor of Rivers State, Governor Siminalayi, Fubara, and appointment of an unelected individual, Vice Admiral Ibokete Abbas, to govern the state is a clear attack on our nation's democracy and abrogation of the vote and democratic rights of the people of Rivers State to choose their leaders under the Constitution. We also have reaction from the Nigerian Bar Association. The president of the Bar Association, Afamosigwe SAN, says the 1999 Constitution does not grant the president the power to remove elected governor, deputy governor, or members of the state's legislature under the guise of a state of emergency. Rather, the Constitution provides clear procedures for the removal of a governor and deputy as per Section 188 of the Constitution. A senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, also has spoken about this issue. In his words, he said the extraordinary measures which may be adopted by the president to restore peace and security in the federation and in any particular state does not include the suspension of an elected governor, an elected deputy governor, and the dissolution of other democratic structures. So those are some reactions that have come forth as far as this issue is concerned. Let's bring in our guest. Jide Ojo is a public affairs analyst, has been a watcher of this space for as long as it has lasted. Mr. Ojo, thank you so much for coming on the program. Let's get your immediate reaction. Was this a surprise to you, the pronouncement or the proclamation of the president?
Yeah, thank you, Geoffrey. Good afternoon, Nigerians. It came to me as a surprise, given the fact that I had thought that all democratic dialogue would be exhausted before we could have a state of emergency, even though it's not totally off the table. But I felt that the dialogue option has not been exhausted. For instance, I've severally called on the National Peace Committee to weigh in on this matter. They should just not wait and a week to elections, sign peace accord for smooth and peaceful elections. This is an issue that borders on governance, and it has lingered for close to 16 months. And I felt that people like General Abdul Salami Abubakar, Bishop Matthew Azankuka, and well-meaning Nigerians like General Yakubu Gowon, as well as Chief Emeka Anyaoku, could have been co-opted into an eminent persons group to mediate the feud. But unfortunately, the president felt the time was right to wield the sledgehammer. I don't think so, but it has happened, and we possibly have to live with it. There is an Igbo adage that when two brothers fight to death, it is a stranger that inherits their father's property. You could see now the sole administrator is not a Rivers man, he's brought in from Cross River. And for the 6 months he's going to be there, the rule of law, so to speak, has been suspended because there will be no legislation, no new law, no governance beyond just the motion without movement of daily, administration. I'm not sure that the administrator will even be able to land the ropes in that short period before the expiration of the state of emergency, given the fact that it will have to work majorly with civil servants for these 6 months. I don't see the commissioner surviving this, in as well as their principal who appointed them have been suspended. That of the deputy governor has been suspended. I do not see how the commissioners or any of the aides of the governor will remain in office. And this will impact negatively, and it's already impacting negatively on the economy of the state. and that of the country. I just read in the Guardian newspaper of Nigeria that Nigeria will lose about $35.3 million daily as a result of the pipeline vandalism that has started. And we just hope that this state of emergency will halt the blowing up of the pipelines and restore peace and order. But let's see what the National Assembly will do today or tomorrow when they debate this proclamation, because they still have to support whatever the president did within 2 days. If they are in session, and I believe they are in session, they will debate this proclamation and vote on it. If they can gather 2/3 majority, then it will stay. And I've also listened to lawyers who said this the entire 6 months does not have to be exhausted before the suspended elected officials could be reinstated. Once he perceives that there is sufficient peace and order, it could leave the proclamation, and there could be restoration of normal governance system in Rivers State.
All right, our eyes and our ears are also at the National Assembly to see what the conversation will be like as far as this issue is concerned. I know that from my little mathematics, it will take about 240 members in the reps and about 72 members in the Senate to be able to get that ratification, if you will, allow me to use that word, to be able to give force to what the president has said. Else it's going to be dead on arrival. But let's talk about what a lot of people appear from our conversation with persons like you, lawyers and the rest of them. There seems not to be a debate about some level of the emergency rule. I think the bigger debate is about the removing of the governors. Some people have said there's a mixed reaction as to literally all of them, but the bigger reaction in terms of division has to do with the removal of the governors. The MB has said it's not constitutional. Falana has said it's not constitutional. A couple of other people have said it's not constitutional, that the Constitution 305 does not expressly state that you remove democratically elected officials from State House of Assembly, governor, and deputy. So do you think that the president was properly advised on this particular one?
Well, we do not know the quality and quantity of intelligence reports that is at the disposal of the president, but I'm just of the opinion that the situation has not matured to a level where there will be a state of emergency of any sort. Geoffrey, you know that in time past, between 2007, 2009, there was daily blowing up of oil pipeline and, abduction of expatriates, and, practically Nigeria hemorrhage. There was no day that pipelines were not being blown up by militants, like Niger Delta Avengers, like the movement for the emancipation of Niger Delta. And that was what led to amnesty in the first place in 2009. But in all of that, while those pipelines were being blown off, the president at that time never suspended, never declared state of emergency in Rivers State, despite the huge act of militarism in the Niger Delta at that time. So, yes, it's maybe the president was trying to be proactive to say before lives will start to be lost, before we will suffer more colossal damage in terms of oil production and all of that, that it will institute this state of emergency. But unfortunately, I don't know if those who are protesting the removal or suspension of the governor and the democratic institutions will want to go to court to challenge the constitutionality or otherwise. But we do know, Geoffrey, you do know that this is not the first time this is happening. We have had in time past in Ekiti, in Plateau, in Adamawa, in fact, in Borno and Yobe, there have been declaration of emergency. Only that in all of this, in some of them, like in Ekiti and in Plateau, the governors were removed, while the state assembly were left to function. In Adamawa, Yobe, and Borno, the base states where Buhari declared state of emergency, the governors and the state democratic institutions like the assembly remained in office. So there have been different manifestations of the features of this, state of emergency. But this is the first time that such extreme measure will happen, that all elected representatives of the people, from the governor to the deputy governor to the 32-member assembly, will be suspended. So you have now closed, or you have now closed 2 out of the 3 arms of government, and you are being a total stranger to an environment that is not familiar with. He's a chief of naval staff. Perhaps he has just done a couple of years in the rivers, maybe in the course of his duty, but he doesn't understand the politics, the nuances, the culture, and some of the things that will help him to properly govern the state. And that is why I'm worried, because now that the state of emergency has been declared, that could send a wrong signal to international community, the investors who may want to have a run on their investment because of fear that there will be breakdown of law and all that.
Mr. Ojo, my apologies. There's an element.
Petroleum Company issued an advisory.
Okay, there's an element I would like you to speak to. And in listening to the president's speech, we would have expected him to. There were hard knocks on the governor. A lot of people also expected. I was also listening to see whether there will be hard knocks on the Minister of the FCT, because to be very fair, this battle is between father and son politically. Those are the 2 people in this fight. Others are what I refer to as cousins of the crisis, with the greatest respect to all of them. One lawyer described it as the leaving Minister Wike out. He has effectively stoked the debate around political permutation. I don't know what you think about this, because some have argued that by the references of the Constitution, it is between the federal government and the state government, the president will make a pronouncement. But there's also the moral burden of him looking at the dramatists personnel and speaking to them. I don't know whether we've ever seen the president speak reprimanding his minister of the FCT, just like he's gotten hard words for the governor. So what do you make of this?
Sincerely speaking, that's why I felt the president has exhibited a kind of partiality or soft spot for the FCT minister, because you know very well that is the orchestra that is beating the drum for this crisis to linger. If he had been privately or publicly cautioned or reprimanded or scolded or ordered by the president to make peace with his godson, we will not have gotten to this level. But as you have rightly said, and as so many observers have said, this is just about 2027, and the president wanted to win the Rivers State and FCT, and felt that this FCT minister is the walls that can help him to win. But a tree does not make a forest. The president cannot promote one individual to be a Superman, with the hope that he alone can deliver victory to him at any electoral contest. There are other human beings, and I think that's why I have never. In fact, I am of the considered view, Jeffrey, that if only the president had called Fubara and Wike into a closed-door meeting, the kind of which he had with the Lagos State House of Assembly member last week, when even after the mediation effort of the former Osun and Ogun State governors, that's Chief Bisi Akande and Chief Olusegun Osoba, after they have mediated the Lagos crisis and restated Obasa, the president still had the time to call all the 40 members to Abuja and held meeting with them for several hours last week, after which they sang his praise. They took a photograph, and we have not heard of further crisis in Lagos State House of Assembly. If only he had exhibited that kind of demeanor towards, calling the 2 dramatists personnel into a closed-door meeting.
Mr. Ojo, without trying to cut you, Just a moment, without trying to cut your line of thought. My apologies, without trying to cut your line of thought. He said in his speech he had tried to intervene. I suspect he's talking about that resolution that he brokered in December 2023. He also talked about before, when he was speaking to Pandef, he said he had spoken to the governor a day before. As I said, we've always heard him talk about referencing things about the governor and all of that publicly, but not much of the minister. So would you say he hasn't really intervened in the past, or he should have done a lot more better? Because now the posturing feels like he's being biased against in favor of the minister. That's the perception.
Geoffrey, I've read the president's speech. I listened to him live. I knew he scolded softly the governor and blamed him for the crisis. That's why he went memory lane. He demolished the State House of Assembly. He did not obey the Supreme Court decision. The president quoted at least 2 or 3 paragraphs of the Supreme Court decision. But you see, you cannot just be dealing with the manifestation of crisis without looking at the root cause. I mean, Mr. President, with due respect, is also a political godfather. And I said this much in my earlier intervention yesterday, that among all his political children, male and female, that he has promoted into stardom, into political stardom in Lagos. I mean, we do know the president even publicly saying he was the one that nominated the immediate past vice president of Nigeria, Yemi Osinbajo. I mean, he said that in Abeokuta. We know his influence in the installation of governors in the Southwest region, without even having to mention name, and in his home state of Lagos. Now, in all of this, where have we seen the president breathing down the neck of his predecessors, or dictating to them, or calling them unpintable names? As early as last week, Minister Wike was still calling Fubara a boy, as if he's not a 50-year-old man, can be said not to have a mind of his own to know how to administer. But we do understand that there could have been more to this in a closed-door agreement, gentleman agreement they may have filed ahead of 2023 election, where Minister Wike bulldozed all opposition to make Fubara governor. But I think the president should have also either privately or publicly reprimand the FCT minister, knowing full well that his very acerbic and incendiary comments of last week Thursday, was it Wednesday or Thursday last week, when he addressed, when he went on live telecast to lambast everybody, including the Jaw leaders, including the governor, including Pandef, that if I were to be the president, that is even a sufficient ground for me to call my minister to order and say, you don't do that. Don't create problem for the federal government of Nigeria. As we have seen, the Rivers State is the treasure base of Nigeria. And I just said for you, what ended the guy today, we are losing $35.3 million per day as a result of the blowing up of the pipelines. This is a year that our 2025 budget was premised on 2.2 million barrels per day oil production. Can we meet that oil production if the situation is not brought under control and we are able to have a smooth oil exploration? I think that the minister should have been cautioned, privately or publicly. It should not have just been dealt with a kid's glove. His public comments is very acerbic and unguarded statements actually led to this crisis. Recall that even when one of the reporters asked him if the governor is impeached, whether there will be no trouble, he said nothing will happen. Yeah, that the guy will be impeached and nothing will happen. We have seen that just serving him impeachment notice has led to a situation where oil pipelines are now being vandalized, are now being blown.
Ms. Aljo, in closing, just in like 1 minute, If you were to advise the National Assembly in this premise, because right now the details, the gazetted details have been sent to them, perhaps we expect them to make a decision today and tomorrow based on Section 305. Do you expect them to, ratify the president's decision or rescind it or stop this? What are you expecting from this National Assembly in about a minute? Because if they don't give force to it, it's dead on arrival. If they give force to it, 6 months down the line or something in between, depending on how the situation is resolved. 1 minute, please.
The point is, if only the opposition representatives in the House of Reps and Senate could muster and lobby their colleagues in APC not to support the presidential proclamation, that can fail. But I don't see that happening because obviously with the kind of defection, the gale of defection that has led to people moving from PDP, Labour Party, NNPP to APC, the APC already has two-third majority in both chambers, both the Senate and House of Reps. So, and the issue about party supremacy, none of them will want to obviously go against the presidential order, and knowing full well that they might seek re-election next year. And by this time next year, the environment will be about party nominations and party primaries. So, and if they voted against the wish of the president, the party can actually penalize them by ensuring that they don't come back in 2027. So I don't actually see the proclamation more so that the president invited the president of the Senate and House of Reps Speaker to a meeting yesterday before the declaration of proclamation was made.
All right, we'll just watch and see how it plays out. Eventually, the hope and prayer is that there will be peace in Rivers State. As we've said, legalese and military might and force may not really bring a solution. The actors have to be brought to the table for a final resolution of this crisis. Jide Ojo is a public affairs analyst joining us via Zoom. Thank you, sir.